Okay, welcome to the CNY Solidarity meeting, Tuesday, February 9th. This is a hybrid meeting, so it's an in-person meeting with component. Their meetings are divided into two meetings. There'll be part one will be a presentation. Is there echo or anything? I'm sorry. Part one will be a presentation from Andra Leimanis from New York, about the current bills that are sitting in the state legislature that are designed to codify the requirements of the CNY and bring us to the commitment to eliminate our dependence on carbon fuel. At the end of that, we'll be in a second phase, which will be a fairly unique experiment for CNY Solidarity, in which we'll have a general discussion involving the CNY Solidarity committees, including climate justice, SLAP, indivisible, and grant, where we are all in the room together. This is a way to actually bring the information that those committees actually generate to the whole group and see where the interactions and interconnections between what we're all dealing with lie. So before we start, just want to acknowledge that we reside on the land of the Onondaga Nations and keep that in our hearts and minds at all times. And we start out with announcements. Are there any announcements?
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to give a report back on Tuesday and on Monday. We released an action alert to contact your county legislators by noon the next day. And I just wanted to report, in less than 24 hours, we got 18 comments into the public record against spending taxpayer money on a frivolous lawsuit. And this doesn't include the emails and calls that people made directly to their legislator. There was 10 comments in support of the lawsuit, but some interesting notes about them. 3 of them did not live in Onondaga County, and every single one of them for the lawsuit was a Republican, like it was a known Republican. They were either elected officials from the town or the state on the Republican committee, or I believe the Republican election commissioner also commented. So once again, it was 2-1 or over that, but with Republicans in the majority with their gerrymandered maps and 30% turnout, the resolution did pass. We'll stay informed of this issue. But I wanted really just to say thank you to everyone who did reach contact and send an email. I just think that was really great. Thank you.
Okay. Any other announcements? Okay, I think Andra, you're up.
Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here talking to you. My name is Andra Leimanis. I'm with Alliance for Green Economy, and we are part of the Renewable Heat Now campaign. So Renewable Heat Now is a campaign that's comprised of 20 groups across New York State. We joined together to accelerate the adoption of ground source and air source heat pumps in New York in order to reduce the amount of fossil fuels that we are burning in our buildings for heating and for cooling and for heating water. We educate the public about heat pumps, and we also advocate for New York State policies that will enable all New Yorkers to switch to these clean heating and cooling technologies. Next slide, please. And why do we focus on buildings? Buildings are New York State's largest source of greenhouse gas emissions. That's from burning fossil fuels for heating, hot water, and cooking. And we also have methane leaks along the gas fracking and distribution system. Next slide. I'll calm down in a minute. It's been a while since I've done a presentation that's not on Zoom. So not enough has been done yet to protect our families and our seniors from predatory gas utilities. By including the New York Heat Act in the budget, New York will take meaningful steps to advance our climate action plan and to protect consumers. Next slide. So all New Yorkers deserve safe, comfortable, affordable buildings where we can live, work, and play. But we have outdated laws, and those laws have rigged the system in ways that force us to keep burning increasingly expensive and toxic fracked gas. The New York Heat Act would unrig that system, would free our state to choose to build cutting-edge electric and thermal energy networks that are more reliable, safer, and more affordable. The New York Heat Act will free up money that we're currently pumping into the gas system so that we would have funding to ensure that all people have access to energy efficiency and electrification upgrades that will benefit our health and the climate. When we pass the New York Heat Act, we will finally move past the old outdated laws that hold New York in the past and will move into the cleaner, healthier, and more affordable future that we deserve. Next slide, please. So after years of organizing across New York State, the New York climate movement pulled off some historic wins in 2022 and 2023. In 2022, our movement passed the Advanced Building Codes and Appliance Standards Act, and that cleared the way to require that our buildings require appliances, and appliances that we are sold in stores will save energy and save us money. We also worked with labor unions to pass the Utility Thermal Energy Network and Jobs Act, which is leading to utilities piloting thermal energy networks all over New York, bringing clean fossil-free heating and cooling to neighborhoods and demonstrating how we will scale this transition. And last year, thanks to the tireless work of Renewable Heat Now, Gas Free New York City, and so many others, we overcame the fossil fuel lobby and passed the All Electric Buildings Act, which requires that new buildings in New York State will be built without fossil fuels starting in 2026 for 6 stories and under, and in 2029 for 7 stories and above. We also fought off a bad methane accounting bill that would have gutted our climate act. So we're securing a pollution-free future for new buildings, but there's one piece left before we can declare full climate victory. We have to ensure that the New Yorkers who are currently stuck with unsafe and increasingly unaffordable gas systems are enabled and funded to move into a pollution-free future too. Well, there's some bad news. The fossil fuel industry is going all out to prevent us from finishing that job. But there is some good news. Support for the New York Heat Act has never been stronger. The bill passed in the state Senate last year, and it enjoys strong support in the Assembly with 76 co-sponsors. And Governor Hochul included some key pillars of the New York Heat Act in her executive budget. Now, what we need to do is to get all of the elected officials who say they support the New York Heat Act to speak in favor of it, to keep supporting it in the One House budgets, and so that it passes fully in the state budget on April 1st. No loopholes, no poison pills. Next slide, please. So the New York Heat Act can help New Yorkers in 4 major ways: fighting climate change, creating safer and healthier homes, bolstering green jobs and a strong economy, and ensuring energy affordability across the state. So I have a disclaimer here. The language of the bills is super wonky because it's changing some archaic public service laws. So I'm going to focus on just the key components and impacts, but you can dig deeper into the bills on your own time if you want. S2016B and A4592B. And don't worry, I will give you all of the links and all the numbers after this presentation in an email so it can be sent out to everybody. So next slide. Fighting climate change. So remember, extreme weather defined the summer of 2023. We suffered through dangerous smoky air, record-breaking heat, and flooding that washed away roads, knocked out trains in the Hudson Valley, and destroyed homes. People died. We can't keep asking people to pay more and more for the dirty fossil fuel gas system that's killing them. And New York Heat stops this by discontinuing a regressive law informally called as the 100-foot rule that makes New Yorkers who are on the gas system subsidize the expansion of the gas system for others. And by changing the so-called obligation to serve that mandates utilities to serve fracked gas to customers, but it doesn't allow them to help people access renewable heating. So those laws need to be adjusted. So New York State would allow, New York Heat would allow New York State to achieve strong climate justice and emission reductions as outlined in our Climate Act, and would enable significant reduction of fossil fuel use in buildings by 2050. It enables neighborhood scale solutions like fossil-free thermal energy networks that would leave nobody stranded on the costly gas system. Utilities will still be obligated to provide safe and reliable service and to invest in keeping the gas system safe, but they will have options to avoid costly gas line replacements and provide customers with renewable heating technologies. So utilities too can comply with the Climate Act. So as you know, buildings are New York's largest source of greenhouse gas emissions, and this legislation is absolutely crucial for New York to be able to meet climate goals. Next slide, please. Creating safer and healthier homes. So our communities are facing unrelenting pollution both inside and outside our homes. New York Heat would free people from the health burdens associated with breathing in unhealthy air from burning fossil fuels. So outdoors, it would stop the expansion of the gas system that causes toxic climate crises like pollution, wildfire smoke, and extreme heat. Inside, it would make it easier and faster for us to phase out fossil fuel combustion in our homes for safe and water heating. Because each time we combust fossil fuels in our homes, it emits nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxide, fine particulates, and carbon dioxide. The health impacts caused by this pollution disproportionately burden vulnerable populations, including children, the elderly, low-income communities, communities of color, renters, and individuals with pre-existing health conditions, which is pretty much all of us. The New York Heat Act enables utilities to invest in neighborhood-scale clean heating and cooling projects like the thermal energy networks. This will result in safer, more comfortable, and healthy homes. Next slide, please. So in terms of the economy, our current system is wasting our money on the antiquated fracked gas system. Collectively, the utilities in New York are investing over $200 million every year to unnecessarily expand gas infrastructure, and those costs end up on our bills. Despite the state's mandated path to a fossil-free future, gas utilities are still acting as if maintaining and expanding the pipelines is the only way to go, even when there already are more affordable and climate-friendly options that would allow us to retire unsafe gas pipelines and give people renewable heating options instead. If we don't act, the financial burden of maintaining and expanding our gas system is going to continue to fall on the backs of consumers, even as these gas systems become obsolete, and we can't afford that. In terms of promoting the green jobs, getting off gas and going all electric over the next 30 years is a massive net positive jobs creator. It would create more than 200,000 new jobs, more than doubling current employment in the building sector. The New York Heat Act requires prevailing wage for projects that utilities would build in place of the gas pipelines, making sure that the replacement jobs for pipeline jobs are fairly sustaining wages. We're committed to making intentional plans to protect the long-term livelihood of today's gas workers. Highly skilled and trained plumbers, pipe fitters, and steam fitters perform jobs that are vital to the clean energy economy and pay family-sustaining wages. That's why we worked with the Upgrade Collaborative to pass the Utility Thermal Energy Network and Jobs Act. It's a pathway for gas workers to build clean thermal energy networks in this transition. Next slide, please. ensuring energy affordability across the state. So our utility bills are actually regressive. The poorest pay the most, relatively speaking. The lowest income New Yorkers spend an average of 13% of their income on energy, while the highest income families pay less than 2% of their income on energy. The New York Heat Act will make energy bills more fair by creating an affordability protection. The Act creates strategies to ensure that residential ratepayers will not pay more than 6% of their income on their utility bills. For the lowest income families, this could result in an average savings of $75 a month on their utility bill. In some areas of New York State, that savings would be even higher. And that is more money for food, rent, and medicine. New York Heat will also support all New Yorkers by reducing how much gas expansion and gas infrastructure investments we're forced to pay for on our bills, and instead would provide retrofits. The New York Heat Act is a pro-climate bill, and it will also cut costs and save us money. Next slide, please. So we have reached this point by working together, and thanks to all of you. This summer in New York City, we had 18 ice cream events where a big ice cream truck traveled around and legislators handed out ice cream and people signed petitions to the governor asking for the New York Heat Act. This autumn, we had 13 chili tour stops, one of them in Syracuse, where a lot of students and folks that had not been otherwise engaged with our climate work were able to get on board, have a free meal, and learn about the New York Heat Act in a fun way with a cantastoria and singing. We also had 200+ organizations sign on to the basic principles of the New York Heat Act, and that letter was delivered to the governor last fall. And the CNY Solidarity Coalition is one of the signing organizations on that letter. 90 local elected officials signed a letter to the governor. 40 youth climate advocates traveled to Albany in November to have a press conference. There were 250 online postcards and 2,500 online postcards and 3,000 postcards delivered to the governor in person. And on January 23rd, we had over 300 people at a rally on $1 million staircase. We gave away 500 t-shirts last fall, and we just ordered 300 more, so everybody who joins us can get this cute t-shirt and be part of the team. Next slide, please. So the people power we're building is having an effect in Albany. Last year, I told you the Senate passed the New York Heat Act. This year, after months of advocacy targeting Governor Hochul, all our summer and fall work, all our organizations and elected officials, the governor included several key provisions of the New York Heat Act in her 2024 State of the State agenda. And we were super excited that she also included those provisions in her executive budget. I think this is going a little long, so I'm going to let you read which proposals were included by the governor in the budget and the follow-up stuff that I said. But it's good. The only thing missing, we're concerned that she doesn't have that 6% income limit language in her language. But the Senate is supporting that, and we hope that the Assembly will support that, and we hope that it will come out in the final budget. Yeah, and I also mentioned we're excited about having 76 Assembly co-sponsored this year. Last year it was far less, so we're gaining momentum. Next slide, please. So as you know, New York has basically a 6-month legislative session. It starts in January with the governor outlining priorities of the state of the state and releasing her budget. And then things start rolling. The Senate and the Assembly each work on their one-house budgets. And that's the status that we're at right now. This is what's going on. They're going to be releasing them sometime in March. And then the two houses and the governor's people come together, and by April 1st, they're supposed to work out and formulate the state budget. So the next 7 weeks are crucial for us for shoring up support for the New York Heat Act. Next slide, please. And here's sort of our grassroots advocacy timeline. If you'll go over to February, you'll see that currently the budget hearings are taking place. Last week was the energy and environmental conservation hearing. We are doing social media actions with legislators this month. We're doing in-district and virtual lobbying, and we hope you'll sign up to help us with that. And we're also doing phone banking with Food and Water Watch. Phone banking in order to provide the opposite of the fossil fuel industry robocalling that a lot of the legislators are subject to. And we do a monthly power hour, which will be March 7th, this coming month, and the Albany rally on the 13th. And we're just going to ramp up the pressure and keep going until April 1st. Hope it works out. That if it doesn't, we have only 5 weeks to try to get it through the rest of the process, which would involve it having to pass in both houses and being signed, not vetoed by the governor. So that's why getting things passed in the budget in New York State is a quite important process. Next slide. So here's a picture of our massive rally from the 23rd. We're super proud that we got buses from across the state, filled the buses, over 300 people in the $1 million staircase, filled the 3rd level, the stairs up to the 4th level balcony, and we're going back on the 13th, and we invite everybody to join us. Next slide. So last month, upper left-hand corner, we had a co-branded social media storm together with New York Renews, and the hashtag New York Heat was seen about 300,000 times. And now we're gearing up to amplify February 14th through 16th social media posts by legislators who support the New York Heat Act. Especially on the 14th, we want to show them a little love for the support that they're giving the New York Heat Act. So I'll keep you updated about what we can do with it. So you see that 3 of our local central New York legislators are strong supporters of New York Heat, and we're super proud of that. Next slide, please. Signing up for the virtual lobbying in the week of February 26th through March 1st would be really great. We set up lobby meetings, like, we all are used to Zoom meetings by now. For CNY Solidarity, it's very similar, a 15-minute meeting. And what has been really effective is for each person to just explain who they are, who they represent, and how the New York Heat Act would affect their family, their neighborhood, why it's important to them. Like, you can be a first-time person in one of these lobby meetings. It's really very simple. There's going to be an experienced person to sort of keep track of everybody and order things going, but we welcome everyone. And we especially want to try to include more youth voices, because legislators really like to hear from young people. Next slide, please. Okay, Food and Water Watch, which is another organization that is part of the Renewable Heat Now campaign, is organizing phone banking on Wednesdays and Thursdays, noon to 2 and 5 to 7. And this is, as I explained, so that we can get calls in to people who are Food and Water Watch members, tell them what the situation is briefly, and ask if they'd like to make a call to their legislator to support the New York Heat Act. And that way they can get patched right through, make that call. If you've never done phone banking before, it's a very kind and gentle way to start phone banking, because you're calling people who are used to getting these calls and who support the cause. Next slide, please. And everyone's invited to join our monthly grassroots meeting. It's a Zoom meeting at 7 o'clock. Next one is Thursday, March 7th. I will share the link with you after the meeting. And next slide, please. Heading back to Albany. Let us know if you'd like to join us. Also, please share the information about the mobilization on the 13th with all your networks and friends, because we'll have transportation, carpools, buses from across the state going there. and we feed everybody a great lunch. Next slide, please. So here we go. Will you help me keep the momentum going? We're going to be doing a lot of things that you can do from the comfort of your own home, involving your friends and family, virtual. If you feel like traveling, you can come to Albany with us. We welcome any type of participation, whether you can give us an hour or you can give us a day. We really need to be pushing hard for this act for climate, health, jobs, economy, and safety reasons. Thank you very much.
Any questions? Yeah.
Maybe I have questions for Andra.
All right. Okay. Dick, you go first.
So 6% guarantee or whatever that turns out to be, obviously will have a big impact, potentially big impact on utility revenue, I would assume, because it'll reduce it in many instances. So can we expect, besides utilities not being in favor of this, which we know already, that they will try to recoup some of those losses in the next rate case?
So this is interesting because the New York Heat Act will actually be helpful for us. Instead of fighting rate case by rate case and always merely being able to reduce the amount of increase that they ask for, this will make it more predictable. And there's also other components in there that I don't know the details of, Dick, that there are sources of funding to make up for that lost revenue. So they can get people off of the fossil fuel system. It's part of that $200 million a year that's being invested in the gas system. If that can be redirected partially, that would be very helpful. But that's just a question. I'm so super sorry.
So you showed 3 local legislators who are supporting the Heat Act. Are the rest of our local legislators not on board?
So the rest of our local legislators who are in Albany have not signed up to be co-sponsors on it. They're like Senator Mannion, he's not a co-sponsor.
And Senator Magdarelli has some community information nights scheduled. Those are in the letter, so show up and ask them.
Oh, yes. They had a lobby visit with Assemblymember Magdarelli in Albany on the 23rd, which was kind of interesting because he listened to them. There was a woman there who had a story of moving into a house with a heat pump away from a gas-fueled combustion system. And she was able to tell him about how the health of her children had improved in terms of their asthma. So if any of you have a story like that, I think it might be very nice to share that with him.
I just have a general question about have other statewide, I don't know, legislative agendas been at all like this, or are there any? And how have they been implemented?
So you mean in other parts of New York State? No, other states. So other states are working on, I know that Massachusetts is working on similar things. But this, New York State is kind of at the forefront in terms of the Climate Act and the supporting of legislation that has to happen in order for us to implement it.
Thank you.
Okay, I have one. Is there anything in the New York Heat Act or other state legislation that would encourage a major manufacturer that's about to build an enormous site in northern Onondaga County to reduce their dependence on natural gas instead of building a 18-inch high-pressure gas line and use more electricity, possibly even produce some of their own electricity by covering several acres of parking lots and roof with solar Is there anything in legislation that would make any of that happen?
So we don't have legislation on that right now, because they are so huge and they have been so welcomed into the county. I think we should start asking questions and making some demands.
Thanks, Peter, because that's actually a segue into a conversation we're gonna have in the second half about the Sustainability Coalition.
This is sort of a general and possibly way off that question, but I'm guessing that, but I believe that there's pretty major hydroelectric generation in the Niagara Falls area that I assume is a major source of electricity for New York State. And that's pretty green. I just wonder, does that stand in the way of further progress towards more greenness, because we already have the edge of that hydroelectric power?
No, we have to go farther than that. It's a really great base that we have, right? But we need to implement more. But you're right, I think it's between 20 and 24% of our electricity generation comes from that source.
So I'm gonna remind all of us that every week in the newsletter, and Andra is real good about keeping us up.
And I'm gonna fill that newsletter.
You're gonna see more stuff. In the 3 sections, the articles of the week are source of information. The action alerts are, this is a real good time to call people, particularly like Magnolia and Mannion, who tend to be immovable, but they need to hear some pressure from us. If you're one of their constituents, please keep that in mind. And the other 3, the 3 that were up there is supporting the new New York Heat Act, also need thanks. They need to be recognized for that. So any of those action that we can take, and there'll be dates for the upcoming trip to Albany and opportunities to get involved in the phone banking and other things. So any last comments or questions for Andra? Jimmy?
Just curious where nuclear fits in on this, nuclear energy, because so many of our candidates are totally in support of more nuclear power plants.
So nuclear energy is not a renewable form of energy. And Alliance for a Green Economy is actually an organization that fights for a carbon-free and nuclear-free energy system for New York State. So we are gathering a lot of information to help share with legislators about why more nuclear is not a good idea. It's an environmental justice issue all the way along the supply chain for fuel and beyond, even closure of plants when we're trying to figure out what to do with the radioactive spent fuel.
Thank you, David.
You know, it might be a good idea to ask both John Mannion and Sarah Hood where they stand on the statute, even though it's not a law, but Sarah Hood has to have a stand on, because if that's done, it's clear to them that that's being done, that puts a lot of pressure on Mannion to do the right thing. So
That's true. People who, legislators who are coming off for an election are always good to try to pin down on certain policy issues. Thank you for that idea.
Okay, so watch the newsletter for updates and specific actions. As Andra said, there's 2 deadlines coming up. Budget's April 1st, the one house budgets are the beginning of March. So we want to take some actions in a very short term.